Since we last spoke, I've pivoted the show a little bit, and I want to see if I can throw you a curveball.
Let's
So
do it.
I'll give you the 30,000 foot view of what happened. So original prompt for the show was, "What's your secret to a good life?" We still explore that from time to time, and it usually comes out. But I put I put 60 episodes, like 200,000 lines of transcript into ChatGPT. And I asked ChatGPT to give me the secret to a good life. Because honestly, the prompt started becoming a little bit redundant, and I had a hunch that it was probably redundant. So we did it's being edited right now as a YouTube video, but it turns out the secrets to a good life. Actually, I'll have you guess. What do you think are one of the top 5 secrets to a good life? There was
Oh,
5
man.
summarized.
Probably good work-life balance, just like time.
We're gonna go with leaning in on relationships. That was one of them. Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Solid. Yeah. Foundation there. Yeah. 5 of them. That's a
5.
lot.
Yeah. So number 1 on the list, without question, was grit. Just square shoulders and a can-do attitude. Everybody had different variations of it. Relationships was number 3. Some semblance of like love, and it had like a bunch of summary notes on it. Faith was number 2. Faith, and it wasn't like a lot of people were faith in God. Some people were faith in like a higher power. Some people were just like faith in their ability to do it. And then finally was just like fun. Was like making time to like get out of the house and go and do things that you enjoy. So, anyways, one of the common themes throughout all the shows was people would share mystical, miracle, and spiritual experiences with me that they had that taught them these lessons. And so I'm curious, have you ever had an experience that you would consider mystical or miraculous or spiritual in nature?
In regards to, are you thinking more of like a career path kind of?
No, I actually like the whole business side of it. I could care less. Typically, it's relevant. Sometimes you'll have some insight that leads you down a route, and that's all cool. But I'll give you a couple of examples of stories that have been shared with me. So I just had Nader Youngchild on the show, who sold his company to Carbon 6 for a boatload of money, like in January. It's crazy. So he broke his back, and one day a huge window shattered in his house. And he walked upstairs into the loft where his office was, and right in the middle of his desk was a hawk with his wings spread out on his desk in the very middle of it, with this like circle of glass around it. And he went and had this like intense moment of focus and clarity, and wrote in his journal for like 5 hours and was able to like clarify his whole life. So that's one. One guy named Chris Widener had these 2 ladies approach him at a conference, and one of them said, "I had a dream, a vision that I was supposed to deliver you a message." And she gave him this message that defined his career. And she said, "To be a voice, not an echo." And so he's written 26 books. He's spoken in 50 countries. He's this prolific, public speaker now. I interviewed a woman named Anne Marie Penny, who over the last 20 years has randomly had pennies delivered to her on the floor of her house. And it always comes during a time when she's like down or like discouraged, and she just gets these little penny reminders from some mystical creature inside of her home. She's at the trans-dimensional exit of a wishing well. And she's got a little box of 45 of these pennies that have appeared in her home. And she's like, I haven't used change in, a decade, right? And I know nobody's messing with me because I've hardly ever told anybody. So another woman did a Ouija board when she was in her 20s, and it led her to her husband. And she was like, "We've been married for 42 years. Like, I looked them up from us going to middle school." So any story that makes you go far out, like that's so cool. Do you have anything that comes to mind like that, that's spiritual or mystical in your experience?
Yeah, nothing as cool as like the pennies. The pennies, that's very unique in the hawk. I would say I think for the most part, going through a unique transition myself. My father-in-law just recently passed away. He was big, quite a big part of my life, and as well as my wife's life. And I'll tell you, the interesting thing about going through that kind of transition with someone is you start to see very unique things that kind of populate. Maybe it's more manifested by yourself naturally because you want it to be that way. but you certainly have these unique moments where you kind of feel like something there, some higher power is there. A good example is, my child is a little about to be just turned 2 years old. And the day he passed away, she clicked the Alexa device and it just so happened to come on Sting, every breath you take. Now, very serendipitous, right? However, he was also a huge Sting fan. And then there's also these really unique moments where I think I was getting into his car and it's almost like you're having a conversation with him because you can hear him, laughing and making fun of you about something you're about to do or something you just did. And I think those moments for me, they're very unique because it transcended me personally recently myself. It really kind of transcended me to start thinking a little bit more of success in a different way. Because I think previously I was very much like money motivated, very much like I want to do this. And I think my father-in-law was a bit in that same vein, but more, I think both of us were very much like we want to do this because it's going to help us support our kids, right? The more, create this generational wealth, we have a larger foundation to work off of. With that said, he had what you would typically say is a great, the retirement dream, right? He was living on a golf course in Kansas City, Missouri at a 3,500 square foot home. He was 55, really good guy. And unfortunately, cancer made his life real short. And unfortunately, it's like his success, right? As we're thinking about success became a little different now. It start to look at it differently, just because of the way what he kind of went through and how it unfortunately ended. And then now you start to see, well, the time I've spent with you last, 3-4 weeks, I was able to spend with him at his hospital bed and at that bedside. That was I felt more success in that moment than I think I've ever had in my entire life. Like that was like, oh, okay, this is the quote unquote meaning of life, right? But really it took a moment of kind of getting the loss, realizing that success, the brass ring that I've been striving for the past couple of decades is actually not necessarily the successful ring. Sure, it's brass. That doesn't mean it's success, right? And so having that kind of philosophy or understanding has been very transformative, I'd say, in the last couple of months.
I'm sorry for your loss, first of all.
I appreciate it.
When did it happen? When did he pass?
Yeah, so he passed away. We were able to get with him I was out there on December 22nd. He passed away on January 5th.
Wow. In Kansas City, Missouri.
In Kansas City, Missouri. He was a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. And obviously, folks, if you look at my background, I'm a big Raiders fan. So I think we had that unique competition in common as well, where at the end of the day, family's much larger than a rivalry. And so I was very appreciative of being part of that little rivalry with him. I'm kind of glad he passed because he didn't get to watch the Chiefs get their butt kicked in the Super Bowl as well. So I think he's kind of excited about that. He did have an opportunity, folks listening. If you go on the Kansas City podcast, what's a Kelsey brother podcast, he was on there about like last year or a year or two ago. They asked if there's a fan want to come to be a live taping, and he actually submitted a request to be on the live taping and he got selected. It's pretty cool. So he was able to kind of have that moment as well. And although, maybe not the most sanitarian friendly thing to do, my wife and my mother-in-law during the Ravens Chiefs game, because they have season tickets to the Chiefs. So they were there in attendance at that game. And during the flyover, they released some of his ashes into the air. Again, probably not the most sanitized thing to do, but again, that was pretty cool. And if anybody has ever watched a game or been a part of that, the national anthem is a very big thing. And so at the end of the time, right, they say land of the home. And instead of saying brave, land of the brave, they say it's quite remarkable and quite moving. Even myself as a Raiders fan, it is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm curious, were you raised religious?
I was born and raised Catholic.
Catholic. Have you ever felt, they tell you that the Holy Spirit enters into you and it gives you power, right? They teach you that it gives you this power to, in God's name, or to, feel elevated or feel, the feeling of like Christ's You can have that elevation. Have you ever felt that inside elevation of feelings from what you could only call as the spirit?
Yeah, I would kind of encourage folks to think about it in a different way as well. When you're kind of having that sense, it's I was a Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic right now, but again, born and raised, I was an altar boy. Went through the whole entire thing. Again, I grew up in Mount Angel, Oregon. So if you actually Google Mount Angel, Oregon, you'll see one of the nicest Catholic churches we probably have here in the state of Oregon, here in the West Side as well. Now, with that said, I think we kind of diverged a little bit on the intent, and the way I interpret it is, have faith, and more importantly, the faith actually resides in yourself. And so having this divine intervention where you're feeling the Holy Spirit within you, the way I kind of articulate that is, I believe in myself enough that I'm going to complete this task. And at the end of the day, one of the things I consistently say is, I've never failed a day in my life. I either succeed or I learn. And what I mean by that is, no matter what trial tribulations I'm going to go through in life, if I may not succeed, it may be a very difficult time, but I'm going to learn something from that moment. So that's going to actually carry me forward. Because at the end of the day, Bob, Lou Hertz said it. Lou Hertz, the old Notre Dame football coach, said it best. He's like, the good Lord gave you two eyes in the front, not in your back, to look towards your future, not back in your past. And I truly believe on that. Learn from what we've done. And when you feel that, Holy Spirit, I do believe it's actually you yourself having a reckoning of believing in yourself. And that's where that faith's come into, right? Whether you believe in God, whether you're an individual, I don't believe that that's going to automatically send to hell or some other location. I truly believe in being a good community person, an individual, a member of their community, society, helping individuals up, whether it's the corporate ladder or the nonprofit sector or whatever it is. Eventually, as you're climbing up that ladder of success, you will slip on a rung and you will fall. And when you fall, it's those individuals that are actually climb up that ladder that are going to reach out and grab you hold of you to kind of keep you from falling further. But they're not going to do that if you actually stepped on their shoulders to keep climbing up that corporate ladder and that success ladder, right? So, what I always encourage people is think about yourself, think about your skills, think about what you're doing. I always talk about like the overcoming imposter syndrome too. A good way to do that is really kind of, get out there and practice. Don't wing it, but there's a lot of conferences now, a lot of things that are available for you to learn and to really increase your capabilities of doing things that will get you to that point where you do feel like this divine intervention or Holy Spirit has entered your body, because it's no longer a core competency of what you're doing, but it's truly now your zone of genius. It's something that you really are very good at, and you're able to do it in a very quick, there's no time restraints, because when you're doing it, you're actually enjoying it and you're very efficient at it and you're really good at it. That's where you really want to get to, right? In life, and whether it's in business or anything. But that's kind of where I kind of define that Holy Spirit coming into. It's really where you've gotten to that level of believing yourself that no matter what obstacle you're going to face, you're either going to learn from it or you're going to succeed. Because at the end of the day, nobody was perfect. The last person that was perfect, and that they say walked on water, and that's kind of last person that was perfect. So I don't intend to be perfect, but I do intend to learn.
So one of the purposes of my journey on this podcast is to detangle a lot of the spiritual experiences that I've had in my own life. And that's why I've pivoted to this subject, because if you go back and you listen to what our guy Jesus was telling these fishermen, right? If you look at that experience that they had on the boat with Jesus walking on water, one of the disciples sat out of the water and is able to walk, right? He teaches them that through this power, faith, right? In Aramaic, I actually don't know the word. I should probably look that up. But he arrived on this seaside beach, and he was like trying to teach these, not clergy class people, if you just don't doubt, then you can do amazing things, right? You don't have to be perfect. It's not about the perfection of you. It's about your faith being perfect. And your faith being perfect is simply the absence of doubt. And so it sounds like you are able to create a faith structure that is strong by getting in the reps, right? You over prepare and go with the flow, and that those feelings of divinity that come into a person are ultimately the flow state that are a result of all of the effort that you've put into being an expert at that thing. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, you know what? I like your word, reputation. Repetition, you're trying to do repetition, do it over and over and over again. And what I mean by that too is one of the things I do on a consistent basis when I wake up is I actually make my bed every day. The reason I do this is because it kind of gives me this like check box. Like I've completed one task already today. And that for me kind of sets me up for success on completing more tasks throughout the day, right? Because I already have that one task out of the way. I know it's small. It seems like a meaningless thing to do. That done, and then when you come back at night and you go to bed and you see it's actually a nice bed made that you're about to get into, it kind of creates an even more relaxing feeling of like, okay, I've created some accomplishment today. And I know like moments of difficulty, I think a lot of people are probably going through a lot of moments of difficulty. I think no matter what time frame, it doesn't matter the administration, doesn't matter what's going on. Everybody at some point in life is going to be going through some hardship. Now, with that said, I would encourage people to throughout the year. One thing I've recently been doing is trying to kind of highlight some of the cool things that we've done throughout the year and put it in a bit of a bowl. At the end of the year or moments we kind of have like a down spell, reach in that bowl and pull it out and just kind of remind myself of some of these either things I've accomplished throughout the year or fun times that my family and I had to kind of get me over that moment, because I'm not big enough to say that I need a counselor. I have a counselor, folks. I think mental health is also a thing that we need to be able to address and feel comfortable talking about. But, really creating these repetitions, as you mentioned, to create the skills and comfortableness of doing it. At the end of the day, nobody is comfortable a public speaker. Nobody just born being comfortable at it. It kind of creates repetition and going out there and doing it over and over again. At the end of the day, if you look at Steph Curry, I think he takes like about 10,000 shots a day. 10,000 shots a day. Tiger Woods, history possibly. His average green was about 20%. So he was able to make it the green 20% of the time. So again, these are individuals that were the best of the best, and they did it because they were constantly repeating the same kind of structure over and over again, but they still could not capture perfection. And that's okay. That's okay, because if you're going to tell me that Woods didn't have a successful career because he wasn't perfect, I'd laugh, right? I would. Same with myself. The perfection doesn't mean your success.
So one of the questions that we've been show for a while, and thanks for just riffing with me, right? Like we're recording already, and you've been great, just going with the flow. My editor will be able to take out any of the stuff that's not relevant to our actual conversation, and then I'll have you introduce yourself, and we'll put that at the beginning. So we'll knit it all together. One of the questions that we've been exploring on the show, because right, like I've laid my hands on people's head as a Mormon missionary, and I have healed them. I've been lifted off the ground in chakra meditations and shown visions. And I know that these things happen. And there's all these great stories that I've heard from all these people about these mystical things happening in their lives. And I am really interested in understanding, right? Like, in order for people to feel that feeling, like let's say they do, there's a lot of people who feel the burning in their bosom. They feel it. They get that elevated emotion. It has nothing to do with the reps that they've done. They haven't ever done anything that they're doing. They have faith without seeing, right? Belief without seeing. They get that godlike emotion, and they call it God, and they feel God, and they feel like God is working through them. And I'm curious for yourself in your own life, this feeling that all these people have, do you think that it is purely physiological, or is there something touching them and filling them with that feeling, or is it priming and expectations and your prefrontal cortex and synesthetically interacting with your other senses to create this mystical experience, and it's just totally in your head? What are your thoughts on that? Is it totally physiological, or is there a divine element to it?
That's a great question, and you're going to be able to right answer, because I do believe it's a bit of a mixture of both, right? Where you do have individuals that are they're starving for this like divine intervention moment, that's willing to kind of create it sometimes in their head. Now, with that said, if you go back to the kind of creation of the Catholicism here in the States, You talk about Juan Diego, right? He born in 1474, right? Died in Mexico. This is an individual where he was an indigenous Mexican, converted to Roman Catholicism because he had a visit from the Virgin Mary. And when he had this visit, they asked him to prove it. And when he did, he opened up his gown, and there was actually a stitching of the Virgin Mary that actually is still visible today. In fact, you go down to the museums down there in Mexico, and there actually is that actual draping is still there. And the uniqueness is, if I recall correctly, the colors and the plants that were used in this Virgin Mary drawing. Again, this is back in the 1400, folks. A lot of the plants that were detailed, one, had not been even discovered yet in that region. Some of the colors, I believe, that were mixed in there were really ingrained into the actual cloth, not necessarily colored. So I think there are these really unique divine moments that really can't be explained otherwise, to be honest with you, outside of the spiritual realm. But with that said, I do believe there are some times where people are kind of reaching for it and they want it so bad that they're willing to kind of create their own belief, but that still can't deter from the things that truly are unexplainable, really. And again, if you folks, I'd encourage you to go check out the Juan Diego story. It's really popular within the Latino community because that is truly our first kind of entry into Catholicism, back in Mexico, back in the, early days before the conquistadors kind of started to come over to the North American lands.
Gabriel, it's been a pleasure. Where can everyone find you?
Yes, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Mr. Gabriel Flores. You can also visit me on my website, theshadesofE.com. We interview, just like Eric, we interview a lot of entrepreneurs. So if you're looking for some entrepreneurial education, how to start a business, really kind of how to scale and things of mentorships and competitions and things of that nature, check out theshadesofE.com. A really good, informative podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been the Pulse Ox podcast. Please, if you found this episode valuable, give us a like on Spotify and share it with a friend.